What's up guys, in this episode we're going to be doing the rust repair and making some custom panels for my 50-year-old FJ cab. I've never ever done any rust repair in my life and I was pretty apprehensive to give it a go, to be honest, because I didn't want to damage the cab. I bought 2 sheets of steel and I just custom made a heap of panels. Literally every panel you see was handmade. I didn't actually end up filming it all. It's a pretty repetitive process. You basically cut out the old panel, make a patch panel, weld it in and grind it back and rinse and repeat for the whole cab. It's just Groundhog Day when you're in it, and if you've done it before, you know exactly what I mean. Just another note, it's a really slow process because I was waiting until all the panels were cool to touch before I put another tack on. So I've cut all that stuff out of the laps, otherwise I would have just been sitting around twiddling my thumbs on camera. Enough of my rambling, let's get into the build log now. Rust repair, it begins. So we're starting with a panel that no one will be able to see first. So this is the back panel of the cab. I've already cut out this piece. It was shocking. And I've made a patch panel using my friend's Lawrence's folder. So I've just lopped down a sheet using my plasma cutter and then folded up that, and then it's going to go straight in there. I've got to weld it. So the plan of attack is basically attack every panel like this, make patch panels, tack and weld them in, grind them back. So on the back of the cab, I'll need to do this corner panel here, and then I'm going to need to fix up this as well. So this is just wobbling around, so this is a locating pin. Hopefully we're going to flash up a bit of a photo montage and I'll show you the before and afters. All the rust repair is now complete apart from the cab. There's actually quite a bit to do on the cab. I sort of underestimated it at the start, but it looks like I'm going to have to replace all of that floor and this side as well. So I'm going to take it down to LCS and we're going to do the work there. LCS 4x4 is building a pretty cool troopy at the moment. So this is a 6.2 litre LSA. It's supercharged and it's got a 6L80 on the back of it, which is the GM 6-speed, and it's on patrol diffs. Similar style guards. It looks pretty bloody cool. But yeah, Troopy's bloody awesome car. I've had a look at the floor and I'm not very happy with it, so I'm planning on cutting the whole thing out and starting again. So first job is to brace across here, and then we'll make some new panels and get on with it. So it's a big job, but I'm just gonna crack on. We're using his bead roller to press some patterns into the flat floor, which is going to make it a bit more rigid and stop the rattling apparently. So I am not familiar with a bead roller, never used one before in my life. I'm so far out of my comfort zone right now, but we're just going to get it done and do our best. Got one half in, all bead rolled now. I'm pretty happy with the result, to be honest. Better than I expected, so yeah, I'm stoked. It looks way better than a completely flat floor. So I've still got to do these foot panels. I didn't think I was going to do them, but while we're here, we may as well. I'm probably the only one that's going to know about them, but I don't want to look at them every time I get in the car, and this is a dodgy rust repair, so we'll cut all this out and just replace it. almost finished up the cab, so I've actually gone and put these blue bar braces in. So I do plan on putting additional braces in, but that's going to depend on where the seats go. So I'll get my seats first, make the frames up, and then put some braces into suits. I'm going to go ahead and cut these braces out now. Then I'll just give it a bit of a prime, and then we can drop it back on the chassis. Alright, so all the floors in and we're ready to put the cab on. I'm just going to give it a coat of primer first and then we're good to go. So from the top, on the front fascia, I've had to replace this little bit in here, and I've put some weld nuts on the inside so it's easy for assembly and disassembly. I was pretty lucky. These panels here on the sides are both in good condition, so I didn't have to do anything to them. I don't have the bonnet on, but as you saw from the time lapse, I had to do a little bit on the bonnet, just a corner, so it wasn't too bad. So on the actual cab itself, now this was the bulk of the work. If you remember from an earlier episode, to fit this 80 series brake booster in, I had to cut out this rib which stiffens the firewall. So I've put this rib back in and I've made it fit with an 80 series brake booster. I actually ended up filling up all the holes in the firewall, and that's because I don't think I'm going to use them all. And this just gives me a blank canvas, and I'm going to have to punch some more holes in. But I thought I didn't want to be constrained by existing holes and clips, so I just filled it all in. It took a fair bit of time, but it's all done now, and once it's all primed and bogged, it'll look really nice. So it's a lot cleaner than it was. If you look at the photos in the time lapse, there were so many holes in here. So I used a plasma cutter and my plasma stencil to fill in the holes. If you remember from previous episodes, I mounted the engine pretty close to the cab. So I've put in recesses for the manifold and the fuel rails so they don't foul on the firewall. So there's more clearance in between there. Here's another view of those recesses I was telling you about. You might not have been able to see it on camera before. So this one is for my fuel rail, and then this one's for my manifold. So it just gives me 15 extra mil. So I think, we're probably looking at 30 to 40 mil clearance all up, which is pretty good. I don't think the engine's going to move that much. There's the inside view of the firewall. So it's all nice and clean, and it's basically a blank canvas now. So my 1973 cab came with a vent here, which you could open and close from inside the cabin. So I've put a patch panel on that, and that's purely for packaging space on the inside of the cabin. So the vent previously took up quite a lot of room in there, and I've just cut it out and put a panel. I've also shaved the fuel filler, so there was a fuel filler here, but I'm not running internal fuel tanks. Mine are located in the back under the tray. I did think about using that filler to try and fill one of my tanks, but I don't think it's got the height. I've got another idea, and we're going to get to that in a few episodes' time. I also had to replace both these bottom corners of the cab, one on each side. They weren't in very good condition, so I just cut them out. I made a patch panel using a shrinker and then welded it in. Along this back sill here for this back panel, I had to do a big patch panel, and I had to completely replace one of the corners, as you can see there. So I haven't primed it yet, but I've got to get around to that. It wasn't in very good condition at all, so there was a lot of rust in this sort of back panel. I believe that's because when the rain comes down, all the water just sits in between. And on the back of the cab, I also had to do a couple of little patches there, and you might have seen that on the time lapse. There was some existing cable mounts, I think, at the back of the cab, and I'm not going to use them, so I cut them all off as well. So you're looking here at the floor, and this was the majority of the work. I didn't think the floor was that bad when I first got the cab, but after the blast, it had a lot of rust, and I couldn't use that corner of the floor because it was fouling on some stuff. So I made completely new floors. I handmade the panels myself using the bead roller and a plasma cutter to cut them out. I've put a 90-degree fold on the inside here, which gives them a bit more rigidity, and then I braced it with blue bar, and you saw that before. So this is a really solid floor. As I said, I'm still going to put in a few more braces just to make it even more solid. I also had to do the footwells. It was a really bad rust repair, so I thought I'd fix it up while I'm there, and I'm really happy with the result of them. I guess you'll notice this big gaping hole here, and that's because I want ease of maintenance, so I'm going to be the one wrenching on this thing, and I really want to be able to take the trans and the transfer case out easily. So with this gap here, I should be able to slide everything back without removing the motor. That's the idea behind it anyway. The plan is to build a trans tunnel and have a solid back part and then a removable front section, so it's easy to work on. I don't have a hoist, so I'll be dropping the trans with an engine crane, so I want to be able to get the engine crane in. But we're going to get to that in a future episode anyway. I guess I've made this gap purposely big so everything on the underbody is easy to work on. You'll notice I've made the cavity bigger here as well, and that's just for ease of maintenance so I can access all the bolts once the trans tunnel's off. You can see here the footwells have been replaced, so the original ones had an extra couple of ribs down here, but I didn't have a means to make them, so I decided not to replace them with the original ribs, but that's alright. I think it looks pretty good, and I guess I didn't have to replace that one, but I wanted to make sure they were symmetrical, otherwise it would do my head in. So I've replaced the passenger side as well as the driver side. That's all I wanted to say about the floor. It's definitely not a factory floor, but it's definitely not a factory car either. The roof, you've seen from previous episodes, it was in pretty good nick. So I had to do a bit of a patch panel here and on the outside as well, but that's all done and I filled in some holes. But yeah, this is an original metal roof, so I'm pretty stoked on the condition of it. It really wasn't that much work in the scheme of things. So that's pretty much all the panels. The doors need some love. They need some panel beating, but they are rust free. Take my word for it. So that's the end of the rust repair. Maybe not my favorite job so far, but it was pretty satisfying watching it all come together and breathing some life back into a 50-year-old cab, and something I've never done before, so I learned a new skill along the way, which is always an added bonus. Let me just say I severely underestimated the amount of work that went into that. So I honestly thought the rust repair would take me a couple of days, but I estimate that I probably spent 80 to 100 hours, and the bulk of that was in the cab. And until you've actually done rust repair, you don't fully understand how much time goes into it. Pretty much every time I looked at the cab for a month, I just ended up spotting bits of the cab that I wasn't happy with and ended up just making brand new patch panels. And now it's as good as new. Obviously, it still needs a lot of work, so it'll need to be bogged and sanded and painted. Speaking of paint, we're getting pretty close to the point where we need to paint this thing, and I guess I'm so on the fence about what to do. I've gotten a few quotes in the last month, and they're probably just a bit out of my budget. Quite frankly, I'm shocked at how expensive painting this thing will be, and I just can't justify a show car paint job. If there's anyone in Melbourne with a spray booth that wants to get involved with the project and help me paint this thing, let me know in the comments or slide me a DM. I'm not asking for a free ride by any means. I know how long this stuff takes. There's no right or wrong order to build a car in, but I guess I left the rust repair until now just to wait until my fab skills had improved a little bit. I need to do the rust repair before my second to final assembly, just in case I need to mount anything on the new floors or the bits that I've replaced. Which actually brings us to the next point. We're on to the second to final assembly. So the car is actually going to come together for the first time in a long time. So we're pretty much going to complete the car as much as possible and then rip it all down for paint. I'm really close to finishing off some other big jobs on the car, so keep your eyes peeled for some new episodes coming in the next few weeks. If you like this content, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Let me know what you think of my amateur job of rust repair, and let me know what you think of my channel. Cheers, guys.